Hello everyone, myself Parvati. My today's presentation topic is hashtag on voice and narrative power in 4. Here is my academic information, table of content. This content we will follow, and research question. My research question is how does J.M. Coetzee's function not merely as a post-colonial writing back, but as a prophetic metacritic of the systematic narrative inequalities that contemporary on voice movement confront. And my hypothesis is I contend that four is a diagnostic narrative that prefigures the on voice crisis. The novel systematically dramatizes how the Western literary appear is structurally designed to consume, distort, and silence marginalized story through the failed quest of Susan Barton and the irritable silence of Friday. Coetzee does not offer a solution but performs the very problem of narrative appreciation, arguing that the struggle for the right to tell one's own story is fundamental struggle for political and existential power. And what is on voice? The modern demands for narrative self determination. On voice is a term and a movement that demands the right for marginalized people to tell their own stories. It is created in 2015 by young adult author Crane Davies. She is a co-founder and editor of Disability Kidlit, as well as the organizer of the On Voice hashtag, a Twitter hashtag to recommend book about diverse character written by authors from that same diverse group. By Davis state, a story is usually better done by people who have had an experience themselves. That kind of no barrier, and it argued that most authentic and nuanced representation come from live experience. And this modern movement is the latest chapter in a very old story. James Coetzee, published in the 1986, dramatized the violent struggle over narrative power that one on voice movement seeks to resolve. This novel, who has the novel asks that who has the right to tell the a story, and who controls the narrative, and what is the lost when the power is abused. And the introduction, the ethical imprevention. On voice is not a trend but an ethical imperative rooted in a long standing political struggle, captured by the disability rights principle, nothing about us without us. In literary term, it fulfill the need for books or to act as a both mirror for self identification and windows into others' lives. Coexist for serve as our foundational case study, demonstrating the consequences when his the principal is voted and the narrative gatekeeper control marginalized stories. Susan Barton, the complicated seeker of unways. Susan embodies the struggle for narrative autonomy, but it's compromised her own position with power structure. She rightly demands authorship for her own story, fighting the patriarchal gatekeeper of foe. However, her struggle is complicated by her own position. While oppressed as a woman, her witness grants her a colonial power over Friday. She thus become a stark example of intersectional complicity, demanding demanding narrative autonomy for herself, while systematically dying into the more marginalized order, and revealing that the fight for voice is not simply binary. Fridays, the muteness, the unspeakable subaltern. Fridays represent the ultimate limits of on voice, the subaltern voice. Authentic experience is structurally incompatible with colonial narrative forms. Friday embodies to The subaltern who experience is structurally implicable with colonial narratives. His cut out tongue symbolize not just a silence but active ensure. However, we must reject seeing him as merely a passive victim. His silence is not empty, it is a meaningful refusal articulated through his dance, flute, and petals. A language is oppressed, cannot comprehended. Coetzee radical point is that Friday's truth is an unnarratable with their framework, and the very demand that they speak on their terms is the final act with epistemic violence. Daniel Foe, the archetypal gatekeeper, Foe embodies the unethical publishing industries, prioritizing markability over authenticity and failing as an ally. Daniel Foe personifies the unethical literary gatekeeper. He is not an ally but a curator of markable trauma, reshaping Suzanne and Friday's truth into palatable fiction. As Rickel argues, his 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 this literary humanitarianism Suzanne's the very sustainability its claim to help for thus become the archetypal of publishing industry that commodifies marginalized voice, prioritizing communal appeal over authentic representation, a dynamic the own voice movement directly confront today. A metafictional climax, the violence of interpretational, the novel ending implicate the reader in the ethical violence of consuming marginalized stories. Coexist climax reveals interpretation itself as an act of violence. Friday's story escape as the unreliable slow stream into the ocean, the pure unnarratable truth forever lost to the colonial framework. In dining our desire to hear his story, Coetzee makes us complicate with foe, forcing us to confront our own roles as consumers of marginalized trauma. Coetzee authorial paradox, a metacritic. Coetzee does not appropriate the subaltern voice but perform a diagnostic critique of the system that necessitates on voice. Coetzee narrate a crucial paradox as a white author. She is coming from South African. He avoids appropriation by making the system of silencing his true subject. He doesn't speak for a Friday, but dramatize the very act of speaking for as an exercise of power. Four is the thus a metacritic diagnosis of the narrative inequality that makes movement like on voice necessary, not an attempt to provide a solution. My learning outcome and the enduring warning the four. I can through this research I can deconstruct how the Western literary aperture is structurally designed to consume or silence marginalized narrative. Also, I can explain how figure seeing narrative power like Susan Barton can simultaneously become complicate across within the border power structure. I can also why Friday's muteness is not absence of voice but a powerful intimated and a form of expression unreliably by colonial term, and recognize the ethical dilemma of the reader's role, acknowledging our complicity in demanding and consuming narrative of marginalized trauma. Conclusion, demand for own voice is the last front in centuries old battle. Narrative powers a battle that coexists for map within a devastating process. For reveals the novel stand as the powerful warning. It teaches us that the ethical pursuit of storytelling is not about forcing the unspeakable to speak but about dismantling the structure that create silence and learning to listen to the form of expression that already exists, waiting to be recognized and their own terms. This from my side. These are the references. If you have question, feel free to ask.
My question is, could Friday's silence be just a look of agency? Are we romanticize his victimhood?
Uh, uh, Point is valid, but Friday is active, not a passive. He communicate through his dance and music. His refusal to speak, it is his way to protecting his story to become become twisted. He is not romanticize his victimhood, but it is resistance uh, uh, towards the refusal.
Prithvi, my question is, where do we go from here? If four is shows us the problem, what does a solution look like in practical terms?
uh, it is not about the solution, but it is not about solution to forcing the silent to speak. It is about the system. It should be changed and should able to give the chance to speak. For example, as the reader, we can choose the poem, we can choose the book like own voice, and as a publisher we should allow or hire editors who wrote about own voice and take that as a main text. And as everyone, we can say that we should choose that type of book which recommended, as sir mentioned, try newer genre. Not but if you are reading Dr. Ik Vijayawada, do not read throughout every book, but other writer you can refer, and this way you cannot particular genre. You can choose now this term is the new, so we can choose this genre to read, and it is not about practical, it is about humanity.